And I would like to call the select board meeting to order. So welcome to this evening's meeting. I will be acting as chair for the evening. Chair Herrick may or may not join us remotely later in the evening. We have an ambitious agenda this evening. I understand that it is terrible weather outside, so we will try to do this as expeditiously as possible. Shortly, we will be opening the agenda for public comment. Oh, I should share that with us this evening are Carlo Bacci, Chris Haley, Mark Doxer, and myself. We don't currently have any board members joining us by way of Zoom, although members of the public may be joining us for part of the meeting or for public comment. We have the good fortune to be joined this evening by the Reading Coalition for Prevention and Support's new outreach coordinator, Crystal Melanakis-Garay, and our new civil rights sergeant, Patrick Silva. We look forward to welcoming you in just a bit. We have a consent agenda. We expect to discuss and vote on Wakefield's changes to the animal control intermunicipal agreement and discuss and vote to approve the renewal of intermunicipal agreement Reading Wakefield to share assessor services for 3 years. At 7:45 or thereabouts, we will discuss and vote to approve an ad hoc committee, or we have the opportunity to vote to approve an ad hoc committee on the Reading Center for Active Living committee, and this is, or recalc, which is an ad hoc committee that Mark had previewed for us at our last committee meeting. At 8 o'clock, we will open a public hearing regarding tax classification. And at 8:30, we will continue our public hearing regarding the right of first refusal for Meadowbrook land, to be followed by a discussion and vote on the acquisition of a portion of Meadowbrook's land located off of Grove Street, and as shown as Lot 5. I think we will be skipping, and Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, the authorization of short-term debt, or is this what that's what we're skipping? Okay, we will not, despite what as appears on the agenda, there is not a need this evening to discuss or vote to authorize short-term debt related to the acquisition of Meadowbrook land along Grove Street. At 9 o'clock or thereabouts, we will discuss and vote on a mediation process with Walt Tuvell related to his open meeting law complaint and potential discussion and vote on response to complaints 5 through 9. Following that agenda item, we will discuss and vote to approve town manager goals, which appear in this evening's packet as well as the last meeting's packet. Then we'll have the opportunity to discuss future agendas, provide select board liaison and town manager reports, and approve meeting minutes. Without further ado, are there members of the public who would like to speak this evening? Is that Alicia? I'm not wearing my glasses.
Where do they want us, right here? Is there like a sticker?
Let's see.
The white thing on the
That'd be
ground.
fantastic. If folks who are speaking this evening wouldn't mind introducing yourselves by name and address, and if you could keep your marks to 2 minutes, it would be appreciated.
Absolutely, I'd be quick. Alicia Williams, Precinct 8, Marla Lane. Dear Select Board, I watched this committee talk and execute the search committee for the town manager. I was so pleased with how the interviews went, and there was so much hope and excitement to see everyone on both sides work together as a team for the betterment of this town and the selection process. To be honest, I found the process to be fair. We had 28 amazing residents show up to put themselves out there, talk about their years of experience and inexperience and their dedication to our town. We had people who were new, who had never been involved before, looking to get involved. We had people who worked in physics apply. We had lawyers, business people, HR representatives new, and one of the oldest. All in all, it was wonderful to hear and see our town come out like I've never seen before. I had written to the select board after the selection committee saying the process for the selection committee was really great. Anyone who feels like doing a public record request, it can be seen on 9/26 at 10:16 a.m. Then the meeting happened where you talked about your selections. So I stopped here and I asked my select board, Does anyone know the statistical probability of 3 members of this board picking the exact same name to be on the committee? Anyone? 1.28% is the probability that 3 people in this committee would pick the same person. That means 98.72%, something else would happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. Do we have anyone in the Zoom waiting room?
Yes, we have Robert Kennedy here.
Okay, Robert, if you wouldn't mind stating your name and address, and then try to keep your remarks to 2 minutes if you would. And welcome.
He's still muted.
Hi, my name is Robert Kennedy. My address is 5602 Avis Hill Court in Fulshire, Texas. I represent Group 1 Automotive. We are purchasing all of the auto dealerships of Prime Automotive Group. One of those dealerships is in your town, Reading, and we're looking forward to running business there in Reading. We've submitted an application to you all to get approved for the licensing for that auto dealership, which is now Prime Honda 128, and will be renamed Ira Honda 128. And Group 1 Automotive, if you don't know, is a public company. We have approximately 120 dealerships across the United States right now, and are buying the Prime auto dealerships, which are 30 dealerships across Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, Maine, and New Hampshire. And I appreciate your time. And I think we are on the next agenda meeting, the 11/9 with your town hall meeting. And I look forward to being there in person for that meeting.
Fabulous. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else present in the room who would like to speak this evening? Anyone else in the Zoom who would like to speak at this juncture, Caitlin?
Yes, we have Dan Dewar.
Dan, if you wouldn't mind stating your name, address, and trying to keep your remarks to 2 minutes, it would be appreciated.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Dan Dewar. I live at 519 Main Street. My question is, last night at town meeting, you had mentioned adjourning to do a Zoom upgrade. My question is, do you plan on pursuing that so that we have this upgrade for town meeting in November? It seemed like it would be more interactive for our town meeting members and a little more helpful to us. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Since this isn't on our agenda, we can't deliberate on it, but do feel free to reach out to me separately. Happy to have a conversation.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anyone else, Caitlin? No? Oh, all right. Thank you very much. Well, without further ado, I would like to welcome our new Coalition Outreach Coordinator, Crystal Melanakis-Garay, and our new Civil Rights Sergeant, Patrick Silva. You're welcome if you'd like to join us and say a few remarks. I'm not sure if you've prepared anything, but we certainly would welcome if you'd like to tell us a little bit about your roles. I know that they're new to you, and we'd certainly love to hear about your plans for your new roles within this community.
Erica, please, ladies first, please.
So thank you so much for having us. It's an honor to be here. We're thrilled to introduce Crystal to all of you and to our community. This is week 4 that she's been with us. Crystal has a great background. She graduated with her Bachelor of Arts from Northeastern University and is currently pursuing her Master's in Criminal Justice at UMass Lowell. Right now is in the midst of midterms and all of that and still working full time. We're very, very lucky to have her. Her experience prior to coming here with us, she worked with Respond, and she was embedded with the Woburn Police Department, Wilmington, as well as Reading. So we got to know Crystal through that role. And prior to that, she She worked at Alternative House in Lowell as a teen advocate and worked with children of domestic violence survivors. Also did some work with the U.S. Attorney's Office and has done great volunteer work in Brazil. So has lots of amazing experience, and we're very lucky to also have her language skills in Portuguese and Spanish. So we look forward to having her work with all of you. She's been working already with students, with parents, with families, and has already brought her compassion and empathy to her role. So I'll let her say hello to you.
Thank you, Erica. Thank you for having me. I am very excited to be joining the town of Reading full-time. With my position at Respond, I was only here 2 times a week, and that was just not enough for me. I needed some more of the Reading Police Department. So I'm really excited. I've been hitting the ground running, working with the school system and the community, and just community outreach, and I'm very excited to continue to grow here.
Well, we're so pleased to have you, Crystal, and thank you for that introduction, Erica. We appreciate it.
Welcome.
We're so
Yeah.
pleased that you're and you
Welcome to Reading.
clearly have such excellent background that has prepared you well, and I'm glad we get to have more time with you here in Reading.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
We'll
you.
turn it to Chief Clark.
Thanks.
Thank you for having us. It's nice to be back in person and see people in person again. A little bit of a background. Years ago, even before police reform, Governor Baker had instituted a need for a civil rights officer within the departments, all police departments. Reading's done a fantastic job through NIBRS, the statewide and federal reporting system that we use to identify and track hate crimes, but there wasn't anything to really oversee or report hate-based incidents. So Governor Baker had the foresight to invest in this, put it forward. We looked at all the agencies have to have a civil rights officer. The job, since we've been sending people to training, has steadily grown to include training and outreach to the community. And with the new social justice position that's going to be coming to the library, we felt the need to have a person dedicated to this position. And I felt there should be a supervisor. If they're going to be representing the town, the police department, I wanted to be a supervisor. So I pitched the idea to the town manager, and I just want to thank Bob once again for your support in helping us get this forward. I presented it in front of town meeting, and I'd like to thank town meeting for continually supporting us. They saw the need for it and allowed me to, this wasn't an extra officer being added to the department, this was a promotion from within. And Sergeant Silva was the natural choice for this position. I worked with the sergeant for a long time now, and he joined the police department in 2009, and he was promoted to sergeant in 2014. He holds many chats in the police department. He's our firearms instructor. He's a field training officer. He runs our in-house computer system. I know I'm forgetting about 14 other things you do, Sarge, but those are kind of the biggest highlights. And the Sarge, when we posted it, jumped at it, very excited to start this position. He's a well-rounded person with the department. He got his bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Salem State, and he has his master's degree from criminal justice from UMass Boston. And he's also an adjunct professor, am I saying it right? And I know I messed it up last time, sorry. An adjunct professor at Merrimack College and teaches criminology, teaches for the criminal justice department up there. Very well-rounded, has a great access to it. And there's no doubt in my mind that when he goes out to the community and he's representing, if there's an incident going on, his care, his compassion, and his strengths are gonna show through. So he's the obvious choice. And I just wanted to introduce him. He is joined by his lovely family here today. I'd like to thank Lieutenant Detective Abadi and Lieutenant Jones who showed up to support Sergeant Silva. I'd like to thank them for coming and introduce Sergeant Silva.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate that. Just excited to kind of get started. I'm still working nights right now and doing a little transition, but we're hopefully promoting 2 new sergeants pretty soon, and I'll be able to come to days and when everybody else is awake and be able to interact with the community a little bit more. So we're just excited to, as a department, to really kind of be as transparent as possible with everything that's being reported to us, within reporting laws and things like that, because we know that even hate-based incidents is a community-type issue that greatly affects people well beyond the actual people involved in the incident. So we're looking forward to being a resource and also being an open ear and learning as much as we're teaching and instructing. So appreciate you having me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us.
Could I say something now?
Sure.
Oh, thanks. Thanks. Yeah, I never knew anybody in Reading at all other than outside my window until February of this year. It's hard to believe I only knew neighbors, and that was the extent of it for being here for like 12 years. But I did get the chance to meet Patrick and his wife Vanessa and his family, and I know that he's the right person for this job. He has dedication and his commitment here to Reading is definitely well acknowledged. And then with Crystal as well, I don't know her. I don't have any stories of meeting her and anything, but neither, I think, nobody does either. So I think that her story hasn't been written yet, but her success and Patrick's success as well is going to be Reading's success. So definitely both of you, we wish you all the best. Me, and I'm sure everyone else does as well. But thank you both.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank you again for your time. I know you guys have a very busy agenda, so we won't keep. I just want to thank you for your time and letting us introduce them to you and to the public as well.
Thank you so much. I know that all of your time is valuable too, so it means a lot to us that you could join us tonight, and we're so pleased that you could. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hold for 10 more seconds.
Okay.
Sure.
Is that okay, Ian? I mean, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, you two are the. Sorry, Matt's too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming in.
Again.
Thanks, Ann.
Great. So next up, thank you all for joining us.
Do your homework.
So next up, we have our consent agenda and voting to approve a couple of agreements. They are included in the packet. Does anyone have, I'm happy to open this up for discussion. Does anyone have any questions? Ivrea hasn't joined us at this juncture, has she? No, okay. Yes,
So I have a question that I think may be for Ivrea.
okay.
In the animal control agreement,
Mm-hmm.
one of the changes that was put in there is in the indemnification section.
Okay,
And I just was wondering why that was crossed out and
well, why don't we put a pin in this agenda item and
Yep.
move on to,
Bob actually has a comment.
oh, Bob has a comment. Bob?
Yeah, thanks. I can speak to all the changes that were made, and I can speak generally what town council's opinions were. A lot of these changes made by Wakefield were in response to things that Ivrea was concerned about. So I have a draft of the agreement. You want to go line by line and just want to ask questions at your pleasure.
So you said that these changes were in response to items that Ivrea was concerned about. Does Ivrea?
Many of them were. Some of them were just wordsmithing, if you will.
Right. Do you know if Ivrea is comfortable with the drafts that are in our packet?
Yeah, she submitted some edits to her own work, and I told her it was too late for that. The concern she had, if you see bullet point 4, let me share the document just so everyone can follow along. In bullet point 4, she appreciated the clarification. She had asked a question about this, and Wakefield's work clarified it. Things before it were cosmetic, if you will, changing community to town and so on and so forth. Again, community and town. This one here, indemnification, let me go to the top of the document. This agreement is intended to be dated July 1st, 2021. That's when we started using their services, which, it is what it is. That makes this sentence unnecessary. If the agreement was to be signed today, then we have had work done retrospectively that we would have wanted Wakefield to hold us harmless for. But the agreement will start July 1st. Town council is fine with that, and this sentence is not necessary. Let's see. I guess the other thing was up here, town council, the only thing she was concerned about that was not addressed was where the animal originated. And so, for instance, she pointed out the way this is worded. If a dog that lives in Wakefield and there's an incident called from Reading, then Reading would pay. And I just told her, we'd accept the risk that dogs were going to be, in the wrong town when the service call arranged. The rest of it, she thought was good. And just to remind the board, these bold and crossouts are made from a version that you previously approved at another meeting. And this is also something, Wakefield was kind enough to lend us employees. So we just wanted to be respectful of them. And again, these changes were made by Wakefield's council and approved as written. I don't know if you have any other specific questions. I'd be happy to answer them.
Thanks, that answered my question on number 9.
Questions or comments from other members of the board?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. In that case, can we approve the consent agenda in one vote, or do we need to take a separate vote on each of these items?
Whichever is your pleasure, either way is what works.
Do I hear a motion?
I can make a motion. I have 2 separate ones, but would you prefer one together?
Why don't we do one?
Okay. Move.
If you do want to do 2, I really should present you the Wakefield assessor one also, if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
Okay, let me find that one. I wanted to do this before Victor got on stage tonight, so let me share this one. The assessor agreement, I honestly don't remember. I think we've shared Victor for 6 years. It could be longer. This agreement expires at the end of the calendar year. I was never sure why, other than it's after tax classification, and when we started that made sense. The only changes, and Wakefield has not seen this yet, this is Reading going first. The only changes that the Wakefield's town administrator and myself suggested were changing the dates, which is pretty obvious, changing the dates. And this sentence previously was requested by Wakefield for a specific reason, and it's just no longer necessary. And then that's it. There's a change in dates only. So, it's pretty straightforward. And this would, again, renew it. We'll date this one today. It will not become effective until January 1st, which is clear down here, January 1st. If there's any questions, happy to answer them. And again, this goes to Wakefield. If they have different thoughts, it may come back to you again. Steve Mayo didn't really see why they'd have any questions, where this is a very long-standing agreement that's worked very well.
Thank you, Bob. Do I hear a motion? Or are there any questions based on Bob's presentation?
Nope.
Okay. Then do I hear a motion?
Move to approve the animal control intermunicipal agreement with Wakefield as presented and the renewal of the intermunicipal agreement Reading Wakefield to share assessor services as presented.
Second.
All in favor, Carlo? Any discussion? Hearing none. Actually, I guess we can raise our hands because no one's remote. So all in favor, please raise your hand. Excellent. The motion passes. Mark, would you like to present the proposal for the Reading Center for Active Living Committee?
Yes, please. So, members, on page 26 in the packet, scroll down to that myself. Should be just right after the 2 agreements. Okay, is a proposal to create an ad hoc committee that we talked about very late in the evening or early in the morning at our last meeting. And the goal of this is to do a couple of things, but most importantly is to move forward on the senior community center idea, to engage residents, and to create a small committee of 7 to move forward to come back to the select board with progress report in time for April town meeting, and ideally to be able to carry forward from there with some additional planning activities. As I think I mentioned to the board, but it was early in the morning, so you may not have had collected all the information at the time. I had hoped to move even faster, but in talking with staff, it seems like it's going to take a bit of time to do a really good job of taking a look at kind of best practices to understand what's out there. And it feels like this is kind of the right cadence for it to get it going and to come back to us in time for April town meeting. So that probably means a March feedback from the group. Well, Halloween.
It is very hot.
It's hot.
Halloween ambiance.
Yep. So in here, so if you remember, town meeting had approved $40,000 to look into this planning senior community center. And there isn't yet a specific plan on kind of how to spend that. And I've been meeting with Gene Delios, I've been meeting with Kevin Bowmiller. And the goal would be to get this group formed ASAP. If it's approved tonight, we could post for 15 days, get VASC together to interview candidates, and then they could conceivably get together end of November, or worst case, very early December. And that would allow for a number of meetings to get them ready for that March activity. So if there are any, let me stop. Are there any questions about what's presented?
Just a quick question, this is good. The, is it up to $40,000 or we plan to spend the whole 40 that was appropriated? I mean, do you have a sense yet?
No sense yet. So the money is actually in Jean's budget.
Right.
And I think the goal would be to get some feedback from this group so that the sooner that they could meet, they could figure out what would be the best way to use the funds. But there's no initial inclination saying you should do X, you should do Y.
Okay.
Oh, Chris, please, go ahead.
Thanks, Ann. So Mark, we would use the VASC committee for the 6 members, and then the select board is just back to here, or how would we go about that?
So certainly for the 4 members, we could decide, I guess that's not clear here, is it? Completely flexible. I had thought perhaps that each of the groups would elect a person, the select board, council on aging, and rec committee.
Mhm.
And then the 4 at large we do through VASC, but if you have a different thought.
I think usually with ad hoc committees, the board appoints rather than VASC.
Yeah, I think that's how we've done it. I think it's actually more fluid because in thinking about, so council on aging has 9 or so members. I actually think they would come pretty quickly to who they'd want to put on.
If we may want to say, one member of the council on, I mean, we may want to just allow the council on aging to put forward their own person that we would then accept. Same for the rec committee. And we could write that in, one member of the council on aging to be, rather than have members of the council on aging come before us, or, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So if we could make that clear here.
Yes,
Member to be
Okay.
appointed by that board for the first 3.
yes,
And then the VASC would, as usual, do the 4 at-large members.
yes.
It's a friendly amendment.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's,
Is this okay, Mark, designated by and then you'd approve them? Or do you want them to appoint them?
Sorry, can you highlight where you are?
Oh, sure, right, yeah, I should do bold and cross out right here. Instead of from, designated by.
designated.
by.
But we also want that, you also want that person to be from the council on aging. That's the intent, right?
Right.
Yes.
So
Right.
one member of the council on aging appointed and, appointed by the council on aging. One member of the recreation committee designated by the recreation committee.
Right.
One member of the, I guess we could say the one member of the select board designated by the select board.
I'm not sure when the rec committee's meeting again. I don't know if that would be a problem.
Do they have a long,
Did have to have a, I got an email today, we guys, let me look at my phone, I think it was, I don't know when the next meeting is.
is it a long, you think it might be a long way out?
I think so, but I'm not sure. I glanced at it. I didn't.
Would they have to have a meeting in order to?
I think they would. I think.
You could say the chair of the recreation committee or the chair's designee.
Yeah, that's what I thought. They plan to skip a November meeting.
So we could say like the chair of the recreation committee or the chair's designee,
Okay with that.
and then it wouldn't require it wouldn't require the committee to meet and vote.
Okay, I mean, yeah, I just, like I said,
No,
I
So that's good, that is
I
good,
glanced
good
at it and I'm
information.
like, okay.
None of this would have been able to happen.
So we're,
So Emily, you're hired.
Or she can designate someone.
Yeah, right.
Um,
so Bob, I think we're looking for parallel language under select board. And what we're suggesting for the, just for the rec committee, I know council is meeting
Your liaison to
2
that,
weeks,
right?
right?
When they, I
In
mean,
the next 2 weeks, I think it might be next week.
okay.
Now, when we did the park ad hoc committee,
Monday.
when we did the park ad hoc committee, we did, how were, I'm trying to remember, how were those individuals selected? Did we just, that was Vask?
Yeah,
Okay.
And then the select board was Karen appointed me as the chair.
As the chair.
Not as the member
As
of the
the
select
member
board.
of the select board?
Bernie's the chair.
Okay. We could solicit, resumes and appoint from that, or do you wanna do something similar to what we did with the screening committee and interview folks?
You're talking about the at-large members?
For the at-large.
yeah, we have to post it and
Yeah.
then,
I was thinking we use VASC
We
to
use
do
Vask.
it, and then bring the recommendations back to the full board.
yeah,
Last time I mentioned that, I got in trouble, but I'm in agreement with the VASC as well. So I think that you guys would just bring it back and then we'll,
Alright, it sounds like that is the will of the board, so
I,
that's
yeah,
fine with me.
yeah, I think, Mark and I should be able to get that done, hopefully 1 to 2 nights tops, depending on everyone's schedule, you know.
Do you think there's gonna be a big interest in this, or like, do you have a sense, Mark, of there's gonna be 70 people, or?
It would be great if there was 70, but I don't anticipate it being that high. I think it would be great for us to really advertise it.
I know, yeah.
And encourage different kinds of folks to apply and come in. I wouldn't anticipate, some huge number like that, but it'd be great to see 10 or 20 folks. I'd love to do that.
Fine.
There actually is a potential schedule. One second, I can even think of it.
Do we want to indicate then in the charge, that the 4 at-large members would be interviewed by the VASC, with recommendations brought by VASC to the board and then appointed by the board?
I think that's the process that VASC uses always. I don't know that we need to call it out especially, but that's what we do with all VASC appointments.
But if we're not saying this is an ad hoc committee and we're specifying, because this is a new, an ad hoc committee is a creation of our board. So I think it makes sense in the other categories, one member, we're specifying how they're going to come to be appointed. And in past ad hoc committees, it sounds like in the park committee that VASC was used, but I'm aware of at least 2 other ad hoc committees in recent memory where I don't think the VASC process was not used and the board appointed individuals without using the VASC process. Like we obviously just did a interview process, and the prior ad hoc committee on human rights had appointed individuals that the board brought forward.
So, okay, so you're suggesting maybe instead of the VAS, we do it like with the screening committee?
No,
Oh,
I'm actually
okay.
just saying that in the charge here,
Oh, okay,
in the
yeah.
description here, we
Right.
say
Yeah.
what we wanna do.
That's fine.
So I think,
I think for me, as long as it fits on one page, I think it's fine. Like, we
Yeah,
have a little
I
bit
just-
more room. So.
yeah, I think just in a couple, after, Bob, at the end, conclusion of the description of the 4 at-large members, what's our setup here, designated by the select board, to be recommended by VASC and appointed by the select board.
I think Bob had his hand up.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Bob, go ahead.
I was going to ask you, is it the board's wishes to appoint the first 3 members? Boards may designate them, and then is the board going to approve them? Or appoint them, I should say?
I think that's what we do, right? Take a vote.
Yeah, well, I think we would probably take a vote.
I think given that, you probably don't have to say anything more than to be recommended by VASC, because you're going to vote for all of them.
Right, okay. Okay,
I'm good with that.
that sounds good.
Yes. Question.
If I may ask, Mark, did you want me to share the proposed timeline? Just let me know.
Sure, yeah, I was just looking at it myself. Sure, yeah, please, why don't we do that?
All
So
right.
this
I'll
is,
share.
at the last meeting, when Kevin and Jean and I sat down, we put together kind of just a proposed timeline based upon bringing it to the meeting tonight, if it was approved, setting out 15 days for VASC.
Okay.
And if everything happens wonderfully, we might be ready for the 11/23 board meeting. So,
Quick, huh?
um,
Good.
well,
Yeah.
that's kind of as fast as it could go.
Yeah.
So, sorry, it's kind of small. Bob, any way to make it bigger? It's the middle, kind of the left section and the middle section that are most important. So I've got it on my screen as well, let me just get to it. So the milestones would be, so the third one down, create the ad hoc study committee, select board discussed on 10/12, scheduled vote on 10/26. If approved, VASC public notice 15 days. VASC could meet right after the notice period, recommend to the select board either at 11/23 or at a future, 11/23 would be kind of the tightest. If we appointed members on the 23rd, if things are really lucky, they might meet in November, but more likely in December or early December. Review the scope of work, any related data, reports to start looking at what's needed. Finalize the scope of work by February for procurement for that $40,000, no later than March, awarded in April. And the planning study could be May through roughly October. The committee would report back its updates to April town meeting. And as proposed, this committee would, it would sunset November 30th, 2022, and could certainly be extended if we like the work that it's doing.
So now I have 2 questions. What questions are ready? Ready?
Yes, please,
Okay.
Carlo.
I am not complaining, but is it that it's 1 select board member? But is it, in this particular case, would it be better to have 2? I'm just throwing that out there. That's number 1 question. And number 2 question, now that I see the timeline, does it make sense to start a conversation about the Zani property in early 2022? Because that is going to be an opportunity for some kind of structure. Because if we don't have that conversation amongst ourselves at least, or a town meeting, then we're just gonna have to wait even longer. So those are kind of my 2 questions.
Yes, please, Mark.
So, take them one at a time. So the notion here was to keep the committee very small, so it'd be very easy to meet, and bias toward mostly community members, and just a little bit of.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not complaining. I just,
That was the reasoning behind it, nothing else?
Nope, fine.
And, we started out with adding a bunch of other folks, and the number just got high, and it was thought 7 just seems to be a good number to work with. So that was the reasoning behind that. I have asked Karen, and I'm not sure if it's on the list yet for future agenda items, for us to have a discussion at a future board meeting about the Zani property and other town-owned properties.
Yeah.
To discuss, how we're gonna look at them. And the thought with this group would be, once they understand the needs, that would be a good time to kind of layer on top of it what we have, see how that fits. But I agree with you, not waiting. This is kind of more of a parallel process.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years.
Adding and making a note for future agendas. so.
Yeah, it may, I didn't look, it may be on there,
Yeah.
but I had brought it to her as an item I'd like to see on a future agenda.
Okay, yeah, that's, and staff, those would be staff run or, no, not staff run?
No, there's a note on top, staff will support, I think,
Okay, support,
the town manager may also require town staff to work with recalc, and I would envision that, Jean and Kevin obviously would be very
okay, right,
involved.
right, but not, okay.
Do we want to
But not run by
indicate that, do we want to indicate who the chair is here or, so that it may facilitate calling the meeting? Like, do we want the member of the select board to chair this or no? Or do you want the group to be just organize? Yes, Chris?
I think, well, I can only speak to Park, but the way that worked is people just wrote names, everyone agreed, and that was it. So
Okay.
for this, like hypothetically, if it was me, it's not gonna be me. And only because I don't have the experience with the community and everything else that other members do. But I think I would leave it up to the committee if it was me on how to run things. Perhaps there's, like, I learned a lot from Bernie from running the park committee meeting that I didn't know before. It's not that I didn't think he was capable, it's just when you see people are actually able to do these kind of things, it's refreshing and it's all volunteers, so I'm fine with, letting the whole committee decide. But it's whatever you guys.
Okay, is that the one other thought, we could knock one future agenda off and we could designate Mark now. I don't know if anyone else is interested in this role, but I gather since Mark has had the wherewithal to bring this forward, he may be interested. So would we want to do that and we'll just knock out one of our appointments right now?
As the select board, yeah.
As the select board,
I'm
right?
totally
So
fine.
we could say,
Yeah.
and comprised of the following, instead of one member of the select board, Mark Doxer to represent the select board.
Yeah, like I said, for me, it's, I'd love to do it, but I will always acquiesce to somebody with more experience and more roots. Mark has been here for longer than, almost than I've been alive, I guess. I don't know. That's accurate.
Not that long.
Not accurate. It's longer than I've been here, at least.
Unless you're 25.
Yes.
I
You have to be 25 again,
appreciate,
Mark.
I appreciate the initiative you,
All of us would love to do it, but I mean, for me, Mark, I think would be the good fit for this. So I'm fine
Bob,
with it.
did you hear that friendly amendment?
Just to add Mark Doxer.
In lieu of one member of the select board, Mark Doxer to represent the select board. And would you mind putting the edited document back up on the screen?
Yeah. Oh yeah, you can't see what I'm doing.
Right.
Yes, we can.
I heard that. If you whisper in Zoom, the whole world knows, by the way.
Oops.
Can you see this?
Yes.
Sort of.
All right, excellent.
That covers what we discussed.
Do I hear a motion?
Move to accept, sorry, I was gonna get the exact wording, 1 second, sorry.
Sure.
Move to approve the creation of the ad hoc Reading Center for Active Living Committee recalc as amended.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Carlo,
Are you taking public comment on anything?
we took public comment at the beginning. We're in the middle of the vote and then I'm happy to take, we're running a little bit ahead of schedule, happy to take an additional public comment. Carlo?
Let's do hands.
Oh yeah, that's right. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Out of practice.
All right, it's definitely out of practice. All right, excellent. The motion is approved. Alicia?
So I just had a question. Why are we doing this now with the senior center? With COVID being so prevalent, and the irony is not lost on me that you two are sitting there with masks on, and we're looking to build a center that is going to bring people together who are elderly. I feel like this is a project that might, be better to be pushed off a little bit. That was one of my comments, and the other comment is, what is the $40,000? How did we come to that number? And where, I guess I can look, but where did the money come from, and how did we decide on that number? So those, I think, are my questions. And I got a couple of texts from people that didn't realize this was gonna be a discussion, and a lot of parents are really upset to see the senior center coming down the pipeline with Killam in the shape that it's in. They really are just kind of, Killam keeps getting kicked down the road, and now we're talking about a new project when we have a school that is in horrid disrepair. And it just seems kind of bad form, so, thank you.
Anyone is welcome to speak, since this is an agenda item, so we can speak. If anyone would like to respond to any. Yes, Bob.
Thank you, Ann. Staff and I had a discussion just about a year ago, and we requested, as part of the last year's budget process last winter, $40,000. We didn't have any real specifics, other than it's been a sort of a community conversation for a while, and certainly notwithstanding the pandemic and the impact that's had. But just to, if you will, get the ball rolling. So that was part of last year's budget process, approved by town meeting last April, and that's where the funds came from. And they're in Jean's budget as of July 1st this summer.
Can I just add that in terms of what we've talked about, and including for town manager goals, that is actually the third highest item on the list, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry, fourth highest item on the list in terms of priority. And getting started on it now means that we're talking about having probably some more formal recommendations by October of 2022. So even starting now, it's a year away plus before things are even going to get rolling. And the last thing I'd say is that the pandemic has really highlighted a lot of needs in the senior community that may or may not be taken care of inside of a facility, but need to be addressed as a community. And it's not meant to be a competition between schools and seniors. It's an and, really, much more than an or.
And I think, we are wearing masks. The Board of Health recently decided to have a campaign around encouraging people to wear masks in public buildings. You probably saw the signs on the way in. I think if this were March 2020, we had other things that were incredibly pressing. We were in a state of emergency. We're no longer in a state of emergency. And I think, the isolation that the pandemic has wrought also needs to be addressed. And as Mark said, this is really a future-looking effort. A senior center isn't going up tomorrow, so we need to be thoughtful in our planning process, certainly for Killam, but also for members of our community at both ends of the of a lifetime. So, thank you. All right. Next up, I think you're running slightly ahead of schedule, and I'd recommend that we take the town manager goals a little bit out of order. If board members don't have any objection to moving that up a bit.
Anne?
Yes.
I just wanted to let you know that Select Board Member Karen Herrick has joined remotely. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Karen. Welcome. Hope you are doing well. All right. So I'd like to, Madam Chair, do you mind if I retain the gavel while you are remote?
Oh, please do.
Okay.
You're doing great. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Bob has presented town manager goals that reflect feedback that he's received from board members as well as department heads. We've had multiple conversations on this, but certainly would board members like to hear additional information from Bob? I don't know if we need, Bob, is there anything that you had prepared or would like to share this evening beyond what we've already previously discussed?
Thanks, Ann. No, I have the document as presented. It's included all feedback I got from the board members. I don't think I've received any feedback in 4 to 6 weeks. I'm happy to talk about it. There's just a summary shown on your screen. I'm happy to talk about the details listed in any of them as board members might be interested. But, the board seemed inclined to agree with this, but technically the board just hasn't approved them yet.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate that, that history of where we've been. Would any board members like to hear additional detail from Bob about any of these goals?
I'm good as well. Thanks.
I think we did everything, I think, except vote.
Okay.
Last time.
Very good. Then do I hear a motion?
Let's see if I have one. Move to approve the town manager goals as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Now I think I do need to do a roll call as Karen is remote. Karen,
Yes.
Carlo,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and yes. The town manager goals are approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
Appreciate all the work you did in putting those together and soliciting feedback. I'd recommend that we
Can we do minutes in 10 minutes?
could do I think we could do minutes.
So if no one has any further edits tonight, all the edits you should have already seen in your packet from Thursday. Unless anyone has any to add right now.
Does anyone have any further edits?
I think
Chris?
thanks, Ann. Yeah, I think it was on page.
It's the last.
Yes, so it's page 64. So I don't know if you have that up, Caitlin, but
The final page.
yeah, so the board decided to think on it and send staff their 2 or 3 picks to be included in their next packet. I would just add by Wednesday so they can discuss appointments at their next meeting.
I'm trying to find the Word document. Caitlin, is this it here? I took it from the meeting folder of the 12th, or was it September?
This one is,
Is this
Hold on, I'll put it up. Hold on one
This is-
second.
Okay,
Yep, September 28th.
I'll pull it up real quick.
okay. Oh, I see it. Okay, you can do it.
Any objection to that edit?
No.
All right. Very good. Do I hear a motion?
Move to accept the minutes of September 28th, 2021 as amended.
Second.
Okay.
Excellent. All in favor, Karen,
Yes.
Carlo,
Yes.
Chris,
yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and yes. Excellent. We have 7 minutes before our next hearing is scheduled to begin. Would anyone like to share any liaison reports while we're waiting?
I have 2 words, town meeting.
Anyone else? Chris?
Thanks, Ann. Yeah, so the park committee is definitely moving right along. A lot of good back and forth between all the members. I think we have a healthy mix of people with ideas and passion behind everything that's been going on. So definitely moving in the right direction. And then the community meeting for the park committee where the public can come and everything is on November 12th.
Okay,
That's going to be posted as well elsewhere. But so November 12th for the public or any businesses that want to come down, et cetera, to just voice their feedback on I believe the draft of stuff is being approved tomorrow night at the meeting.
the draft of what?
Of the park committees, like our recommendations, et cetera, so this way the public can weigh in on what we're thinking and then go from there.
Is the survey concluded?
I believe it's still open as far as it was on the last meeting. The majority of the feedback was already given. I know the town sent out QR codes along with another survey on it as well. So there's probably additional feedback from that we haven't received. Maybe it's 5,000 people, maybe it's 50. But it seemed to be steering kind of the way that it did in prior surveys, surprisingly. And then for, what do you call it? The Historic Commission, the Summer Ave is, I believe I couldn't make the meeting, but they had an on-site visit for Summer Ave, 186. And I believe that's being shared tomorrow, the results from their meeting on that. So that is definitely progressing over there. That's the place with the fence around it, et cetera. But that's what I got, the two updates for those.
Excellent. Mark or Karen, yes, Mark.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Chris, what's the, so you mentioned the 12th, there'll be a meeting to get some more public input. When do you think Park is coming back to the board?
I'd have to, check with Bernie and Liz and see what they were thinking, but it's probably right after they get the feedback from the community at that meeting. I would assume that they'll give an update and then hear feedback from us, and then, go forward. I believe Bernie was ambitious with his end date of right around Thanksgiving or something like that. I mean, it was a healthy goal or whatever you want to say about it, but, it's definitely progressing towards it, so. But that's what I would think is right around that time, because I know it was delayed a little in the beginning, so obviously the timeline is a little skewed. But I can touch base with him and just say. So.
Carla.
Should we post just in case?
The 23rd?
The 12th.
12.
Oh, 12th. Oh, of November, I'm sorry, I'm thinking December, sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
Caitlin, do you hear that? Can you post us for the 12th? Please, November 12th?
Thank you, Caitlin. Appreciate it. Other liaison reports?
Excuse me, just for a second, November 12th, so that's a Friday, is that right?
Is it? Then I'm wrong.
Is it?
I
Okay.
know I screwed up hold on, let me get it for you real quick.
Yeah, Friday's.
Because I know we went back and forth with 3 or 4 different dates, and I actually clarified the correct one. So then now I have to go and find the actual correct one.
Is it the 12th?
Yeah, give me 1 sec.
Yeah, it's a Friday.
I think Bob has his hand up, he might know.
Yeah, Bob.
Jean had told me November 10th, if that makes sense, which is a Wednesday.
Off by 2 days.
Okay.
So November
Post you
10th.
for the correct date.
Thank you.
I'll be there on the 12th though as well if you're so inclined.
And bring in donuts.
Yes, apple cider donuts, Mark.
Anyone else for a liaison report? We have 2 minutes.
And I have a 30-second update.
Please, Karen, go ahead.
From the Climate Advisory Committee. Interestingly, they had a group called MCAN. It's a nonprofit that, Caitlin, I'll get you the exact name after the meeting. So they reached out to the committee and then presented. They evaluate all of the MLPs for a number of factors in the state. So quick level summary was RMLD, if I remember correctly, was about 9th. Some of the interesting things, small things that they could do better is post contact information on the website. There's no way to get in touch with the commissioners, and I think it's pretty hard to get in touch with the general manager as well. So, but overall, out of about 41 coming in 9th was generally very positive, and I believe that report was going to be forwarded on to the commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I'll share that at the last Board of Health meeting that Carl and Chris also attended, they decided to embark on a public information campaign encouraging masking in public buildings, and that they also decided to post COVID data specific to Reading on the website every 2 weeks. So that will be made available to the public on a bi-weekly basis. It is 8:00. Do I hear a motion for, can you,
Yeah, let me read
will you read the
Hearing notice.
hearing notice? Thank you.
It's a team effort here.
Appreciate it all.
To the inhabitants of the town of Reading, notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held in accordance with the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 369 of the Acts of 1982, on the issue of determining a residential factor in assessing the percentage of tax burden to be borne by each class of property for fiscal year 2021. The hearing will be held on Tuesday, October 26, 2021, at 8 p.m. in the Select Board Meeting Room at Town Hall, 16 Lowell Street, Reading, Massachusetts, and remotely on Zoom. The 5 classes of property involved are residential, open space, commercial, industrial, and personal property. A copy of the proposed document regarding this topic will be in the Select Board packet on the website at www.readingma.gov. All interested parties are invited to attend the hearing or may submit their comments in writing or by email to townmanager@ci.reading.ma.us by order of Robert W. LaLasher, Town Manager.
Thank you, Mark. Do I hear any, now that the hearing is open, are there members of the public who would wish to speak? Hearing none. Oh. Caitlin, is there a member of the public who wishes to speak?
There's some members on here, I'm not sure if they wish to speak or not. If you could raise your hand, that would be great. Or anything. John Means.
Okay. Welcome, John.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is John Means. I live at 56 Forest Street here in Reading. I'm also a local business owner as well. Many of you know I am part of the North Reading Chamber of Commerce, and I'm speaking on their behalf tonight and many of the local businesses as well. I've had this conversation with some of you before, and right here at Town Hall as well in the last few years. And I know that this is a topic that does come up every year, and the last few years I have spoken to you passionately about why keeping the tax rate, as a 1-to-1 ratio as it is now presently, is in the best interest of the town of Reading, along with businesses in Reading, all the way down to our residents as well. And a lot of times this is seen as sort of like kicking the can down the road. And I agree. I think that is a proper way that you could look at this particular subject and the way it comes up every year. I praise the board and their understanding last year and going through the pandemic and the shutdown of many businesses and really the trouble that a lot of businesses and residents had as well. Everything from where they were financially to health-wise as well too. And that had a big impact on everyone across the board. And it was decided upon keeping the tax rate of where it was, a 1-to-1 ratio. And I believe at the time it was the right call, and I believe at this time now it remains the right call. I think in the town of Reading, what we find is that there is not as much of a commercial base as there are in some of the surrounding towns that we have around us. That they can afford to do a 2-to-1 ratio, and the commercial base property in those towns makes it equitable. I don't find that that's the case here in Reading, and I feel that in Reading too, with the current predicament that the pandemic has put on everyone, the strain that it has caused many of our small businesses, voting to change the tax rate right now really shows poor faith in the town and trying to support our local businesses. They need all the support they can get right now. There's rising costs of property values and other items such as supply, and we all know about the supply chain issues. That is causing supplies to cost twice as much as they did just 2 years ago. And then you've got the staffing issues that many businesses are going through. So they're really struggling to stay afloat, but doing everything they can to try to stay in business and provide jobs for local residents of the town, provide many different extracurricular activities for the town, putting their money into donations, and so forth. And the businesses have shown great faith in trying to keep themselves afloat as well as still being a part of our community.
John,
And I think it's a great showing for us to turn around and say,
John, if you wouldn't mind wrapping up, I think we're getting a little long and we have a number of staff here to present.
I totally understand. There's just a lot to say on it. But I do hope the town does recognize where we are in a situation right now as far from the economy, right on down to where citizens are too with their finances being tight as well. And that this is not the right time or place to do something like this. Thank you. I do appreciate your time.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Now, for members of the board and Victor has created a presentation which is in our packet and appears prepared to present this evening. I know we have some newer members of the board, and as a board we are a relatively new board. Would my fellow board members like to hear a presentation from Victor, or would you prefer to ask questions? Chris.
Thanks, Ed. I would like to see it because I haven't participated in any of this, so
Okay.
I'll have questions afterwards and
Great. Well, Victor,
sure he'll have answers.
would you like to take it away then?
Sure, thank you very much, and
Thank you.
thank you for your prior vote of confidence and trust and faith in me for another round of, municipal assessing. And want 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 38 minutes? I got a whole song and dance here, but we'll just start with the basics.
Sounds good.
All right, slide 2, Mr. Slide Master. Classification, there are 4 items that need to be covered. First is a selection of a minimum residential factor, and I'll explain what that is in a moment. Selection of a discount for open space, pretty easy. We don't have any designated that. Granting of a residential exemption, I'll talk about that in a bit, and granting of a small commercial exemption. Minimum residential factor. Over the past couple of years since we implemented Reading's groundbreaking senior tax relief program, we've adopted a slight shift in the tax rate just to equalize disbursements that we're able to assist seniors with. But a minimum residential factor of 1 would yield a single tax rate. Pretty simple formula. Tax levy is about 82.4 million divided by about 6.2 billion in total real and personal property value, and multiply the result by 1,000. You come up with a 1329 estimated single tax rate. Next slide. Now I mentioned the results of our senior circuit breaker at this point because all my other calculations are factored with these funds shifted within the tax rate. This year, banner year, 230 seniors applied, 226 were approved. The ones that weren't approved typically are over in assets or don't meet the minimum guidelines relative to how their real estate trust is structured. Total amount of senior circuit breaker income tax credit received by folks was about $236,000. The current exemption amount that we give them is 150% of that. So the amount that I have to shift within the residential tax base is about $354,000. At 150%, we're shifting that $354,000. The residential tax rate will be $1,333,000. And the commercial industrial rate would be $1,356,000 at what we've done the past few years, a shift factor of 1.02. Without a shift, we end up with a residential tax rate of 13.35 and a lower commercial rate of 13.29. I can't name more about maybe one or two communities that have that odd scenario where there is something causing a split in the rate and the residential rate is higher than the commercial. The next slide, talk about the average single-family value for fiscal '22 is $702,600. And, you know, if you go back and take a peek at page 1, I try to pick a house right around that average single-family value to showcase. I'm sorry if the owner's watching and they don't like the picture I have. So basically, when you go down this shift table, what I do is use that average single-family value and tell you at various intervals what the anticipated tax obligation would be. And in bold is our prior selection of 1.02 with the minimum residential factor. That's the technical number I'll ask you to adopt, which should yield the anticipated tax rates. We see that we would have an estimated residential rate of 13.33 and an estimated 2022 tax bill of 93.66. And the next slide just gives the average single-family tax bill from 2007 to present. Slide after, tax rate note. Of the tax levy I mentioned earlier, about 2.8 million is our debt exclusion amount for fiscal year 2022. Including that within the tax levy, as we're required to do, adds 45 cents to the residential tax rate, or $316 to the average single-family home, and $810 to the average commercial property. Just like to break down the cost of debt for taxpayers to know that, you know, these increases, they're not all just, you know, property values go up, tax rates change. There's other components to that. Sales activity. In order for me to revalue the entire community, the basis of my assessments are sales during calendar year 2020. So my breakdown of sales activity in the community measures 2019 to 2020. You see we had less sales in 2020, but a dramatic drop in days on market by almost 10 days, and quite a significant increase from 664,000 average sale price to 708,000 average sale price over the period. Next slide. The average commercial property value is 1.8 million. Now, we all know how averages work. That takes a parking lot valued at 35,000 up to Home Depot valued at 29 million. Here's the average of everybody. And again, at that 1.02 shift factor, the anticipated commercial rate would be 13.55 and a tax obligation of 24.4. When we flip the page though, I like to include a median commercial property value, which gives a truer picture of what the average building owner, perhaps along Main Street, smaller areas, smaller pockets around town, would be facing as a result of, you know, adoption of these factors. And at 1.02, again, 13.55 rate, looking at a tax bill of $10,400. The next slide is just a graphical representation based on value delineation of the various types of properties we have in the community. Next slide, the average commercial tax bill history from 2007 to present. The reason I focus on like average single-family value, that's the standard unit of measure used by the Department of Revenue in the materials they produce for all the communities. If you're ever bored, you can go to the Department of Revenue website, look at all this fascinating data, and the one metric they use, ranking cities and towns, things of that nature, is the average single-family tax bill. Discount for open space. I include the definition of what open space is. We have no properties that meet that specific designation to be qualified as open space. And we've never done it. So that one would obviously be, no. A residential exemption. Select Board may adopt a residential exemption for residential properties in town that are owner occupied. An amount of up to 35% of the average assessed value of all residential properties, including vacant land and things of that nature, is what you would use. Adopting this would significantly raise the residential tax rate. It would apply to all residential properties before the exemption. And the way it would shake out is basically the top third of valued homeowners in town would be paying for the exemption for everybody else. And Reading is largely a single-family home community, a bedroom community, largely owner-occupied. Really not designed to work in a community like this, and it's only adopted by, I think, 13 communities in the Commonwealth. I used to work in one, Chelsea, where it worked really well. So over here, again, probably not something to entertain. And small commercial exemption.
Excuse me, could I interrupt for just 1 second? I'm not sure the viewers at home, not in the Zoom, can see the slides. I got a communication that there's a resident trying to watch this. Is there something we could change on Zoom?
If they're watching on RCTV, that would be how RCTV is covering it, I assume. Are they watching through Zoom?
Yeah. And so I don't know if it's on Facebook or I don't know if it's on YouTube or how they're watching it. They're not logged into our meeting. They're watching as just.
They're watching through RCTV.
I'm not gonna do that.
I'm not sure it's his issue.
He would know, I think, wouldn't he? Check YouTube.
But
They could go to the Town of Wakefield website and log on and read the materials from there.
It's also what's also on our.
Okay, I got another communication that now the slides are visible, so I think we're good. Thank you, RCTV.
I have it on here, so it's on.
Okay, please.
My apologies, Victor.
Go ahead, Victor.
Sure. Small commercial exemption, up to 10% of property value for commercial properties only. No industrial, no personal property. Total property value has to be less than $1 million. Not more than 10 employees as certified by the Department of Employment and Training. One business in a building of several businesses would qualify only if all the other businesses qualify. And the exemption doesn't go to the business owner. It goes to the real estate owner. Less than a dozen communities in the Commonwealth have adopted this exemption. I think there might be one in town that may qualify for this exemption. But again, it's not widely utilized. If the state were to significantly increase the values in employees, then I would say definitely it's a tax policy worth considering that could benefit a larger population of folks. And the next slide is basically all information that we compiled on various community comparisons, Linfield, North Reading, Stoneham, Wakefield. Oh, well, that guy is over there. Wilmington, Woburn, Reading, and basically just giving you what the average tax bills were for last year, tax rates, and what they do for tax shift. In Wakefield, for example, they have a capacity to go to 1.75, and boy, oh boy, they do it. When I first started here, I was, I think, given a packet by Bob with all these different communities in it from various Reading interest groups that had comparisons to a multitude of communities. So the rest of the data is pretty much a compilation of all those communities that they wanted to see on one or two sheets to compare Reading to. With that, if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Victor. Questions from the board? Karen, I can't tell if you have your hand up. Do you have any questions?
No questions. Thank you. Excellent presentation.
Oh, Chris?
Thanks, Ann. So looking at the neighboring communities, FY 2021, the last final slide that you had up there. Being a small business owner myself, if you were to base where I would like to move my business, where it makes financial sense, I would pick Reading from this chart, right? Is that because the rate is so low compared to all the other communities? Like, to open up something in Wilmington seems kind of ill-advised if you were going that way. Is that the way that this table is breaking out? That Wilmington's tax is $30.59 and ours is $14.06?
There's also, there's an opposing viewpoint too to those numbers. For example, in Wakefield, by going to the max, it saves the average single-family taxpayer over $830. Those are the two opposing viewpoints right there. And you are correct.
I guess I don't have any other questions for Victor. It's more of my own opinions on all of this, so I don't know if we want to save that.
Then if we don't, okay, ahead.
I would also extend, if you want to have a conversation down the road a bit and, get really down and granular with data, I'm always happy to oblige.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Victor. Should we close the hearing and then we can open it up for board discussion?
I'm fine with that.
So I think, Caitlin, there are no other members of the public who wish to speak, is that right, in the Zoom? Okay, and
I'm not seeing any at this time.
no one present in the room from members of the public who wish to speak on this matter? All right. Do I hear a motion to close the hearing?
Motion that the select board close the hearing establishing the FY 2021 tax rate.
Second.
All in favor, Carlo,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and yes, Karen?
Yes.
Right, the hearing is closed. I now open the floor to the board for discussion and deliberation. Chris?
I guess I'll have to go first. Speaking as a resident and a small business owner myself, I know the pandemic you're cut both ways. As a resident, I'd love to save $800 on my taxes. As a business owner, I'd love to do the same thing. I know for me, I can't speak for health insurance, that's through my wife, et cetera. I know those rates have gone up. But for commercial, our automobile insurance and our liability, et cetera, has gone up 10 to 15%. When I just renewed all of that kind of stuff, it was just astronomical. I couldn't believe it. But it's all the prices are going up across the board. Same thing for restaurants. My lunch used to be $16. It's now $19. It's all of these prices are going up for everybody, and I'm paying for it both ways. Being a resident and a business owner, and then eating at local businesses for lunch during the day. So for me, I'd like to keep things the same in prior years, only because, yes, it's not the right time to be doing that. We want to be welcoming small businesses to come to Reading. We have a couple empty storefronts. Things have been on the uptick, I would say, with the amount of businesses moving back into Reading. I understand the other side of that is, why is Home Depot paying the same price as Drew's Stews or IntelliBeam? I agree with that. It's unfortunate we can't charge them more, but at the same time, they're bringing in more, and then people are maybe shopping here, and I mean, you can go into a whole different scenario with that. So I understand both sides of it. I guess for me, I would just like to keep the things the same for this year. look at things next year, see how we are in town, if more businesses are here, because everybody is struggling, and to pin it on one as opposed to the other, it doesn't seem like the right time to be changing it for me. So that's what I got.
Thanks, Chris. Other board members? Mark?
Thanks, Ann. Thanks, Chris. So this is kind of the discussion that we go through each year also, and the same thing, that we're a 90+% residential community, only 10% business. I think we've been doing a nice job of enticing new business into town. I think that with our economic development team here in town, there's a lot of great efforts that are out there that really helped through the pandemic and through other activities. There's talk of the bid and all sorts of other things coming together. So I think that the town has been very, very supportive of small businesses, of all businesses, excuse me, not just small businesses. And I think that's great. I think that that's kind of what our responsibility is. I would love to see us able to shift more of the burden, particularly onto the very large businesses if we could. But we can't distinguish between them, so that's a drag. So it's gonna have to be for all when it happens. I actually think that for this year, we should kind of stay with this 1.02 split that we've had for the last couple of years. I think that we want to kind of continue to support all that we can. But I think we also have to recognize that as businesses recover, as things are doing better, we're going to need to do more of a shift, because I think we owe it to the residential taxpayers of the community. We know that we'll have some very large projects coming on soon. And the great news is that the high school and Wood End will be coming off. But the net is going to be up, and we need to figure out, that's going to be a burden on everyone. We need to kind of figure out how to work that through. I think, again, as it relates to this year, I'm in favor of holding it to 1.02 as a strong message of support to our business community. With an understanding that as things are recovering, I think we want to kind of relook that and change it. I know we can go up to 1.5 conceivably. I'm not sure that that's our, in the cards, but we can do that. There are three other issues that are on the table also. The open space discount, I think, as Victor laid out, is not something that I think we want to work with. The residential exemption, I also think we do not want to do that. And last but not least, the small commercial exemption, I think no on that one also. So those are kind of my four thoughts.
Thank you, Mark. Couldn't have said it better myself. Other board members?
Yeah, thank you.
Carlo?
Thanks. I've been attending this meeting for about 15 years. And I'm thankful for the shift to help the seniors that a former select board member, John Halsey, initiated with the town staff and Victor. And Mark has a lot of good points, but I'm on point with Mr. Means. I don't need to repeat what he said. We have a long road ahead of us as small business owners and as residents paying for goods and services. And so I've always been of the notion, keep it where it is. But I understand Mark's points, and I'll revisit that at a future time. But for this year, I'd like to keep it the same and agree with Mark's comments on the other open space and residential exemptions. Thanks.
Thanks, Carlo. Karen, did you have anything you'd like to add?
All right, I agree with earlier board members' comments that I think we are in a period where we need to emphasize stability. I am starting to see by the data that was presented tonight that Reading is an outlier, and I would be open to a more detailed discussion in the future. But for the moment, I'd like to keep things stable. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Do I hear a motion? Oh, Chris, please go
Sorry,
ahead.
I just wanted to, I thought of something else and wanted everyone else to finish. Thanks, Ann.
Sure.
To Mark's point about the bid as well, for the various businesses, and then I think it's single family or something down. And anyway, for downtown, the bid thing is going to end up, the businesses will have to actually buy into that. So that's something to consider in the future, that if they're paying the fee into this and then we're going to raise rates higher. It's just something that's coming down the pike to be, at least known that, if they decline to end up joining it and whatnot, and then it never goes through, then that's something to think. But I just think it's another, we want to definitely be trying to bring all businesses back to Reading and have the existing ones succeed in everything going forward. It's just one thing that I want to mention for the future discussion.
Carlo.
Can I piggyback on that? That's a good point. And hopefully I'm not wrong, Liz, on this, but it's a certain area for the bid. It's not the entire commercial base of the town.
Correct.
So it's for the downtown, and I think it's at least 50 or 51% buy-in, is my recollection. That the property owners, 51%, let's just pick that's the number, say yes, and 49 said no. Well, those 49 now have to buy into it. So to Chris's point, all of our local businesses are in downtown. So this would not affect Home Depot. This would not affect the big office buildings. They can obviously be, contribute money. It's a private organization, but I'm glad Chris brought up that point. This will be another increase in commercial taxes to the small business community if the bid is adopted. I'm not against the bid, but my building falls within the bid. So my taxes will go up. We have not been presented as a property owner. Weighed in yet to support or not support the bid. So I will gladly do so and ask, but that's another consideration that if the bid is formed for us for next year to consider, especially for our small downtown businesses that, hopefully we'll be in a better footing, but thanks.
Thanks. Do I hear a motion?
I have 4 motions.
Very good. Why don't we go through let's do one at a time.
Okay. So in the order I have them here, the first one would be on the open space discount.
Okay.
Move that the select board not grant an open space discount for fiscal year 2021.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second,
Any discussion?
Mark,
Yes.
can you make that 2022? Sorry.
Yeah, so is that a global change?
Yeah, for the rest of them.
Okay.
Yeah, I used last year's motions and I forgot to change the year.
Any objection from the board to that being a friendly amendment?
No.
Okay, so let me take it from the top. Move that the select board not grant an open space discount for fiscal year 2022.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Carlo?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And yes, Karen? Karen?
Karen, yes, thanks.
Excellent. Do I hear another motion?
Move that the select board not adopt a residential exemption for fiscal year 2022.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Carlo?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes,
And yes.
Move that the select board adopt, and Victor, you help me with this, I'll make sure I've got it right, a residential factor of 0.9985 for fiscal year 2022.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Carlo?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Karen?
yes,
And yes.
Move that the select board not grant a small commercial exemption for fiscal year 2022.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Carlo?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Karen?
yes.
And yes. Have we concluded? Was that 4?
Those are all the
That
motions.
was 4. All right, very good. Thank you so much, Victor. Really
very
appreciate
much,
it.
folks.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Appreciate
the
it.
advanced presentation and the live presentation. We appreciate both very much.
Thank you so
All
much.
right, have a great night.
Thanks for your great work.
All right. So next up on our agenda is reopening the hearing on Meadowbrook land. Let's see. So do we need to, do we need to read the hearing notice once again?
I see Ivrea on the screen.
Ivrea, do we read the hearing notice once again for the continuation of the public hearing on Meadowbrook?
You don't legally have to. I don't know, Bob, what's the practice of Reading in this case?
I don't remember it happening. It may have happened on a random occasion, but not regularly.
You can just reopen the hearing or make the statement.
I'll reopen the hearing to discuss and vote on a right of first refusal for Meadowbrook land on Grove Street. July 6, 2021, notice of intent to sell. I'll open the floor to the board for discussion.
I just have a quick procedural question, and Bob and Ivrea, if you can help me on this one. 8:30 is the public hearing, and then 8:45 agenda isn't, but related. So do we do them still separately? Anyone?
So
Oh.
is Ivrea, sorry, please Ivrea, go ahead if you have your hand raised. I'm sorry, I don't have my glasses on.
I'm sorry, I didn't know if that question was directed towards Bob or myself, but the hearing has to start you can't start the hearing before 8:30, but you can take the second matter at any time because it's not a hearing. So it's permissible to discuss them both at the same time if the board so chooses.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted, because
Thanks,
they're
Ivrea.
very related. Thank
They're
you.
related.
Okay.
I'll say, it seems like we really only have one choice here based on the town meeting vote, which is to vote against exercising our right of first refusal and voting in favor of the acquisition of Lot 5.
I agree.
Yes.
All right? Is there anyone from the public here to comment? Who would like to be heard? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to close the hearing?
Motion to close the hearing on the right of first refusal for Meadowbrook land on Grove Street.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Carlo?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
And yes. All right. Do I hear a motion on the right of first refusal?
So can I just ask
Yes,
a
please.
question before we go to that? So the plan to go from here would be to vote not to exercise the right of first refusal, then to acquire Lot 5, and that would be the kind of the order of operations. Is that
I think
is that
so,
correct?
because I think, if I'm not mistaken, and Ivrea, please correct me, I think the offer relative to Lot 5 is contingent on our not exercising, or voting not to exercise our right of first refusal.
That's correct, Anne. So the offer is contingent on the board voting tonight to waive its right of first refusal, to send notice of that waiver by November 5th to Meadowbrook's attorney, to exercise the offer agreement and send notice of the exercise tonight to Bancroft. The offer is still contingent on town meeting, an affirmative final vote on from town meeting, because as you know, town meeting votes are not final until 7 days post dissolution. So we still have that caveat in the extremely rare case that something were to occur between now and November 5th when those votes become final.
Given that town meeting, our special town meeting is closed, there's no opportunity for anything to happen in the interim, correct?
So there is a process in your charter for there to be a ballot referendum. I think you need 3% of the voters to sign it, but we haven't had any indication that that process is being employed in this case.
Okay. Thank you, Ivrea.
Would you like a motion?
I would love a motion. Thank you.
Move that the
Mr.
select
Secretary.
board vote not to exercise its right of first refusal pursuant to General Law C-61B S9 with a portion of Meadowbrook Golf Club Corporation of Reading's property identified in its notice of intent to sell dated July 6, 2021, and on such terms and conditions outlined therein, and direct the town manager to send notice of such waiver to Meadowbrook's council by November 5th, 2021.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Chris?
Thanks, Ann. I know there's been some back and forth regarding conflicts of interest and whatnot, and I ended up reaching out to Ivrea because it was noted to me that somebody made a donation to my campaign back in April. I spoke with Ivrea. She said that I was, it was a nominal figure, et cetera. I had no conflict. So I didn't really have to do anything. So on the advice of counsel, I am actually doing something, and I filed a 23B on it to disclose everything to the town, just to be safe and fully transparent. Guy who ended up buying this property or made the offer, et cetera, donated $250 back in April to my campaign under Alpha Realty Group, which isn't Bancroft. I didn't know Guy before or anything. I knew nobody, once again, till February in all of Reading, until he showed up here and he was associated with it. So for me, I can't even pronounce his last name, and I've spent more time explaining this to everybody here than I have ever spent discussing things or communicating with Guy ever. So that's what I got for that. So thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Any other discussion? I do actually have a question for Ivrea. Is the motion as read fine to have said to not exercise versus saying to waive? Just given, I know they have the same essential meaning, but knowing that the offer is contingent on our waiving, do we need to use that language?
It's acceptable, Anne.
Okay, thank you. All right. Any other discussion? Great. Mark?
So in general?
Yes.
So we've, that motion was made.
Yes.
Sorry, I need to catch up for a second.
Yes.
Did we vote on that motion?
No.
No.
Thank you.
You're discussing, I said any discussion, and oftentimes we have none. This time we had some.
Got it. Okay.
All right. Any other discussion? None on the screen? Caitlin, we're good on Zoom? No other discussion? Okay, great. Hearing none. Carlo? All in favor? Carlo?
Not voted yet. Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
And yes. Do I hear another motion?
Can I ask a question before
Yes.
moving to the motion? So in order to move forward with the acquisition of the lot, it is going to require working on a purchase and sale agreement directly with Bancroft. And it probably makes sense for the board to appoint someone to kind of take point on that. And that should be part of the motion or included in the motion to have a designated person to do that.
Okay. Mark,
I'd like to make a motion to have Mark continue to be the point person for the select board on this purchase and sale with Meadowbrook. And I'm sure Ivrea has a better way to say that.
that was pretty good, but I think that's not wrapped up into the other motion then. Do you feel like you said you thought it should be one motion, or is it okay to have two separate motions on that? From your preference?
So it seems to be wrapped into one because there's an authorization for town council to move
Okay.
forward on a purchase
Okay.
and sale. And
Okay.
then the suggestion would be to have guidance and direction from a board member.
Okay.
And I would be happy to continue to do that if that's acceptable to other members.
Carlo?
Correct me if I'm wrong, I don't understand that why any of us need to be involved when the price is pretty clear cut, it's $450. There's no negotiating, there's no give me this for that, it's $450, and that's it. If town council can't handle that, I don't see what input any of us could give to a 30-page purchase and sale agreement that was, only thing to do would be to kill the deal. Because the deal's been negotiated already in good faith by Bancroft and the town in open session in a town meeting. So I just don't understand, and I sent Ivry a message, why any of us need to be involved in this. It can be handled very quickly. I just don't want to delay things for the developer, for anyone else, or for Meadowbrook. I think town council and Bob or whoever, without us, can handle this. It's pretty straightforward. That's my 2 cents.
I think there could be just, from my own home purchase, remembering there's like offer and acceptance, and then there's a purchase and sale, and you do a little bit more negotiating after we all we have right now is the offer. So we're about to vote on the acceptance, but then there is can be a little bit of negotiation with purchase and sale, and I think there's been an expression of interest certainly around, and would be a separate party, but I don't know if there might be some opportunity to have conversations around the easement for Meadowbrook or something along those lines too. That may not be really part of the purchase and sale, but I would certainly welcome I know that those conversations were kind of primed but not really fully had, so.
The only contingency I read was the buffer zone. That's it. Our agreement is with.
That was the only condition.
Condition,
Yeah.
right, which would be if we said no to that, or they changed it, then there'd be a negotiation. But, are we gonna go in and say we wanna pay $425 now? I mean, that's not up for debate.
Ivria?
Thank you, Anne. So Carlo, I agree with you that the price of the parcel is not going to change. It's not going to be negotiated. And the likelihood that there is going to need to be kind of a substantive back and forth is pretty minor in this case. You're right, it's going to be a standard purchase and sale agreement. However, sometimes things do come up, and it is helpful for me to have a point person to speak with and not have to have the whole board weigh in. It's unlikely that something like that will come up, but it is just helpful for me to have a point person. In terms of timing, all three parties, the town, Bancroft, and Meadowbrook, are committed to this deal moving forward in an expeditious manner. The timelines that are laid out in the offer, the town can easily comply with, and we will comply with. So I don't view delegating authority to one select board member to work with town council on this to be an impediment to reaching those timelines. So I request a point person because I do think it's helpful in those rare cases where something comes up.
And if there is an issue, will that be conveyed to the entire board?
Absolutely.
Can I ask a question?
Thank you, Ivy.
One moment, Alicia, just want to make sure the board has an opportunity. Any other discussion by the board? Yeah, Chris.
Yeah, I think I'm fine with Mark continuing on. I don't know what I'm not a real estate person. I don't know purchase and sale. All I know is I pay XYZ a month. It stinks. I want to pay less, but I can't. And, it's if you can negotiate that for me down, that'd be fantastic. You cannot. So I think with Ivria, I guess if Ivria is only reaching out to a board member, if we have an issue, I don't have a problem with him reaching out if she has an issue to reaching out to Mark kind of scenario. And then if it's something massive, then the whole board has to get involved and whatnot. But I mean, for me, I'm okay with Mark doing it, but hopefully Ivria doesn't have any issues and then it doesn't matter anyway. It seems like the way that's going, so.
Ivrea, question, what would be the process for the conversation with Meadowbrook about the easement? Is that not something that we can contemplate this evening, or is that a separate agenda item?
So is it a separate agenda item? That's an interesting question. I think that to the extent the board wants to engage in conversations with Meadowbrook about a potential opportunity to acquire an easement on its property, it could vote tonight to authorize an individual to do that. It's happened organically out of this deal around Lot 5. Just to be clear, Meadowbrook has not offered to grant or donate an easement to the town, so that would need to be a new negotiation separate and distinct from the Lot 5 acquisition from Bancroft.
Do you have a recommendation for how we might modify the motion to contemplate that?
So I would advise that there be two separate motions then. One motion which just deals with the Lot 5 acquisition, authorizing an individual to work with me to finalize the PNS, to bring it back to the board, to direct the town manager to send the acceptance of the offer notice to Bancroft, and then a separate and distinct motion pertaining to the Meadowbrook potential easement. I think we should keep the matters distinct.
Okay. Chris.
Thanks. I guess Ivrea just mentioned that it's the board would be involved in the negotiation of the purchase and sale and whatnot, but the way that I interpret it is only if there's issues. Like, I guess is the blurb that has to get added to that.
Well, I mean, you just never know what can come up during a purchase and sale negotiation. It still is a negotiation. And while this one is likely to be standard and it is something I can probably handle myself, you just never know. A question could come up about timing, and it's helpful to have a select board member for me to reach out to. But in terms of the parameters of the sale, it's $450,000 for Lot 5, and the only conditions that the property will carry are related to the setbacks. Those terms will not change and will not be negotiated.
And other cities and towns that you've worked with have done the same thing. They delegate a select board member or somebody else as well. So this isn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. This is pretty standard, and it usually has to come back to the full board anyways for approval. That's in keeping with the town meeting vote as well. So this is a pretty standard process.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Do I hear? Sounds like we may have two motions, but do I hear a first motion?
Move that the select board accept the offer from Meadowbrook and Bancroft dated October 18th, 2021, in which Bancroft agrees to sell a parcel of land identified as Lot 5 on an approval not required plan prepared by Sullivan Engineering Group LLC entitled Plan of Land Off of Grove Street located in Reading, Massachusetts, prepared for Meadowbrook Golf Club, dated December 4th, 2020, with a revision date of December 9th, 2020, as endorsed by the Community Planning and Development Commission on December 14th, 2020, to the town for a purchase price of $450,000 and with no deed restrictions aside from setback restrictions as noted in the offer, provided, however, that any sale of Lot 5 to the town shall be contingent on an affirmative final vote of town meeting authorizing the acquisition of land and the appropriation of funds. And further, direct the town manager to send notice of the board's acceptance of the offer to Bancroft's counsel, and further, authorize town council with direction from Mark Doxer as a board member to work with Bancroft on a purchase and sale agreement, said agreement to be approved by the board prior to November 24th, 2021.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none.
I don't. Oops. Sorry. And I think Dan, I saw a pop-up that Dan had a question. I don't know if now's the time for that.
I think not right now.
Okay.
Let's see, any discussion from the board? All right, hearing none. Carlo,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
and yes. All right. right. I know that there are a couple members of the public who are looking to speak. I'd ask, let's see, we have, I just am mindful of town council's time. All right. Could I just ask what it's in regard to?
It was just a point of clarification. I was just curious why a lawyer wouldn't talk to our town manager. Like, because the town meeting has already voted. So wouldn't it default to him to deal with anything that comes up?
It sounds like this is the standard process.
Okay, I just wanted
Sure.
to clarify.
Dan, could I ask what your question's in regard to?
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. My question is in regard to the negotiation went from 5 1/4 down to 450. The original offer was included a gravel parking lot, and I don't see that anywhere in the revised option. What happened to that?
So I don't know.
System
Yep.
deliberation.
Go ahead.
This doesn't seem appropriate.
Sorry, Ivrea, did you have your hand raised or no?
I think that was
No,
Karen.
no.
Okay,
That was Karen.
that was Karen, okay. So that was not a condition. That there were no conditions other than the ones that we've discussed. All right,
This is how the board negotiated.
Yeah.
This is how.
all right, do I hear a second motion?
So I think maybe, would it be possible to kind of craft it together just a little bit here to figure out what it ought to be?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think our intent is to work with Meadowbrook to acquire an easement, to have a discussion with them, and probably to have a person from the board focused on that, and then again, bring it back to the whole board. But I think to move it ahead, I think that the goal of town meeting would be to see if that is possible to work through. And the question is, what's the best way to do that? And certainly, we'd want help of town staff. I think that the Conservation Commission, or a member of the Conservation Commission might be a really important person who understands what needs to happen and how to do it. And kind of what the conditions are now. And then I think certainly Chuck Taroni would have a lot to say on this also. So I think the question is, how do we figure out how to craft that discussion and have kind of a single person work with Meadowbrook and town council to work that through.
Carlo.
Thank you. I don't disagree, Mark, but I don't want to get us in trouble. This is not an agenda item, so is it?
Town council just said it was okay.
Is it,
So-
even though it's not, I just want to make sure we're covered.
Yeah. So, I mean, ideally,
You know what's going to happen.
so when is the board meeting next? Are you not meeting until the 9th?
Right. Correct.
Mark, you know my intention. I'm not sure.
I think if we could wait, it would be best here. I mean, we could make an argument that it's developing organically, but generally the Attorney General's advice here is if the motion is not essential, that it be delayed.
Okay. All right. We can give it some more thought then. All right, very good. All right, then next, Bob.
I have a couple of documents I'm gonna walk around and ask for signatures.
Okay.
The first is purchase of lot 5. 2 members have already given permission to use their electronic or wet signatures, their stamp signatures. So I'm gonna need Carlo and Chris. This has to be faxed to Ivrea tonight. And then there's another agreement, the right of first refusal to not exercise it. That requires in-person wet signatures. I'll ask for you for tonight and then arrange with Karen offline. So if you don't mind, I'll just walk around now.
Bob, just to clarify, an email is appropriate,
Okay, great.
not a fax.
Even
Yeah.
better. Thank you.
It's the 90s.
Excellent. So next on our agenda, we have the set of open meeting law issues that have come before us based on complaints filed by Walt Tubble. Ivrea, did you want to give an overview, or I'm happy to based on our last conversation, but I think you certainly have a good sense of what our options are tonight and as well as what we have to do tonight.
Sure. So since we last spoke, I've been in communication with Mr. Tubble and the mediator. Mr. Tubble reviewed the board's actions and has returned with additional constraints on the structure of the mediation. He would like the mediation to be in person. In addition, he would like the mediation recorded. As we've discussed previously, the mediation will look fairly different than a standard meeting. There might be a time where the mediator is speaking just with one party. So Mr. Tubble has recognized that when the mediator is just speaking with the town, those discussions don't need to be recorded. But when both the town and Mr. Tubble are speaking with the mediator together, he would like that recording made and provided to him. So that's his second request. And then his final request is in regards to timing. He is available only until 8 p.m., although he said that he is free on the weekends as well. So I think the first thing for the board to consider is how it would respond to this to the extent that you want to continue down the path of mediation. At this point, though, Mr. Tubble did file his 9th open meeting law complaint on October 21st. So I do think it's appropriate for the board to consider whether this is the path it still wants to go down in regards to mediation, whether it thinks there is hope for it to be successful at this point. To the extent that the board decides not to continue with mediation, we would have to respond to all of the outstanding complaints by November 9th, 10 business days. So that means that tonight we would need to figure out how we want to respond to the outstanding complaints and authorize me to respond timely. So I think, Anne, might be a good time for me to turn it back over to you to just talk through some of the policy considerations that the board has in front of it.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you very much, Ivrea, for that overview. So it looks like we have a couple options before us, and one is, do we, first, do we respond to Walt with an acceptance or a counter offer of the terms of the mediation that he's proposed, or do we decline to proceed with mediation based on our anticipation of how successful it will be? And then, if we choose to continue with mediation, do we request that complaint 9 be added to the mediation? So I'm happy to open the floor to the board for discussion on those points. Mark.
Thanks, Ann. I think that despite our best efforts to work out an arrangement, I don't think it's going to be fruitful. I think our best bet at this point is to respond to any open complaints we haven't responded to, let the Attorney General rule on all of the complaints, and if and where there are some issues where we need to look at our policies, that's fine. And if they're, as we contend, if they're not valid, then they'll be finished. I think I'm no longer interested in pursuing the mediation route. I don't think it'll have any value.
Other board members? Chris.
Thanks, Ann. So Ivrea, am I understanding correctly that if we were to meet in person or hybrid or whatever scenario, it can't happen until 8 o'clock at night?
No, before 8.
Oh, before 8?
Before
okay.
8.
Well, I was going to say if it's after 8, then, I mean, for me, I don't know how this is going to all shake out in the end. I don't know if mediation is going to work. I don't know if it is. I don't even know what happens in mediation. I don't know. So I'm open to continuing down that path and seeing what happens. I mean, it's part of the process. I don't know what's going to happen. So I'm okay with just continuing the way things are. I guess for me, it's more of the terms and everything else that. But knowing that it's before 8 o'clock, I mean, I'm okay with that. But I'm okay with just continuing how things are progressing. At least it's showing that we are taking this, along the process that it was, whether or not it works in the end or not. I mean, it's yet to be seen, so that's what I got for that.
Thank you, Chris. Other board members?
In this particular situation, I would go with the majority. I don't know if there's gonna be a majority on this decision. But I agree with both Mark and Chris. So, I agree more with Mark, but it's not to say that what a mediation how fruitful that would be. It's hard for me to determine that, given the way it's gone. There's an indication, but, it seems like it's a one-way street, not a two-way street, in my opinion. But having said that, if we can get in a room, I don't think it can get any worse. That's just my opinion on that, but I will, if, I don't wanna be a deciding vote, if I have to, I will, but if three of you say yes mediation, or three of you say no, that's where I'm going. If it's 2-2, and then, but I'm okay either way. I can argue both sides of this, but it's been a long road with this particular individual, so I'd like to put it to an end, if possible.
Karen, do you have thoughts you'd like to share?
Sure. I do understand other select board members' comments. I'm willing to give it one more shot if I think the two factors we might offer back to mediation would be, especially knowing the mediator is probably going to want to do it remotely. I'm willing to offer hybrid, and I don't remember what the other factor was.
The recording.
A request to record, which I think is out of the ordinary for mediation, so I don't think I would offer that. But I would, if we could do it hybrid, that's as close as we can get to everyone being in the same room, knowing that Anne will be unable to participate in the mediation anyway. I'm willing to give it another shot, and but I think this is the kind of the crossroads at the end of it. Thank you.
All right. So I think I'm a little bit in the same space as Carlo, being a bit of two minds. I think it would be reasonable to have this be to decide that we don't think this will be successful, and decline to proceed with mediation, especially given that is going to be a more expensive path. But I also think it would be a reasonable choice to make one sort of last final offer for terms of mediation that are reasonable. I don't want to propose terms of mediation that are going to put, especially because I am not going to be there. I wouldn't want to vote to proceed with mediation on terms that made any other board member who is going to be there uncomfortable, whether it's, in person or during times that they have to work or whatever the case may be. So I'm mindful of my fellow board members who are going to be actually doing this were we to proceed, and what conditions they would be comfortable with. If there were, if the board, if my fellow board members identified conditions that under which they would be comfortable proceeding, then I would support that. I wouldn't support proceeding on conditions that made other board members who will participate uncomfortable. Carlo.
I guess I'll ask you guys first. Correct me if I'm wrong, I read he only wants in person. Did I misread that?
You didn't misread that, no.
Okay,
So it would be like a counter offer.
Because Karen mentioned hybrid, and I'm okay with that, but he seemed pretty, he's mentioned it more than once.
Yeah.
That it has to be in person. So.
Right.
Anne?
Yes.
I just add in that I said we offer hybrid because I believe the mediator would prefer remote, but I am perfectly willing to meet in person.
Mark.
Thanks, Ann. So, I find it a little bit ironic that where allegations relate to not kind of following process, the requests are all not to follow process. And I, as you know, was very much in favor of mediation before. I've come to believe that that won't work. I think that the notion of allowing recordings to take place when the purpose of the mediator is not to have that is completely counterproductive and just not acceptable. That would be a term I would not accept under any circumstance. How we meet is fine. I don't have a problem with that. But I really think that this is, he seems to want real answers to these questions, and I'm feeling now that the Attorney General is the one that can provide the answers.
Chris?
Thanks, Ann. I think for me, like I said, I don't even know what happens in mediation. I don't know what the outcome can be, like don't file OMLs anymore, or I don't know what comes out of it. I guess I'm gonna find out possibly. Carlo, you do vote first, so I don't know how that works. But I guess for me, we voted for this to be held in executive session. Is that correct?
You did.
So why are we not using whatever happens in executive session as our ground rules for the way that we should continue? So in an executive session, we could have it hybrid or in person. So that's that. Executive session isn't recorded, I don't believe it is. We can just use the same terms as executive session. That's the way we voted. That's the way we continue. It seems like that's been the case for everybody else that we've ever done. I mean, not for me, but that we've ever done it with. So that seems logical to me. Whatever protocols and policies and procedures executive session follows, we follow those. And that's it. We don't delineate. Just keep it the way it is. We already voted for it, and just put a period and see what happens.
So I guess, I'm hearing if we were to proceed with mediation with conditions, I think I'm hearing, sort of the conditions we would counter offer would be hybrid, no recording. But what about the time? Is before, so he said before 8 p.m. And he's willing to do any day of the week, Ivrea, is that right?
Correct, yes. He said he would even meet on the weekends if that was easier for the select board.
And what kind of blocks of time should board members be, preparing were we to do mediation?
Yeah. So the mediator has indicated that at minimum it's going to take 2 hours for a session, and at most it could take 5 hours. So we definitely can work around the select board schedule. If you only have like a 4-hour block of time, we can make that known to the to the mediator. But it is, ideally we would set aside 5 hours for the mediation.
Bob, I see a hand.
Thanks, Ann. Ivrea, I'm assuming this is a posted meeting of the select board. Would it be an executive session and that therefore minutes required?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And it would just be a standard meeting. So meet in open session, then move to convene into executive session, standard practice.
What would then determine when the minutes could be released?
Yeah, so we were actually talking about this in my office the other day. I think that the answer to that question is once all of the appeal periods have run, provided that there's no sensitive settlement negotiation discussions. So it may be a redacted minute set that is released ultimately, but it will really depend on the nature of the conversation.
Okay, thank you.
So do board members feel like the, before 8 p.m. Condition that Walt proposed is okay with them?
Yeah.
That means a 3 o'clock start time.
Potentially.
So that would be 2022 for me. I'm not devoting 5 hours in my busiest time of year. Sorry, guys, I'm just not doing it.
But this is only one or two. One first meeting is the 3 to 5 hour thing, and then the follow-up is like 2 or something. Is that the case?
So ideally, we could do it in one session. It really depends on how it goes. It's hard. You know, I've had mediations that have gone weeks. Have had others that have settled the first day. So it's really hard to speak to it.
What, am I allowed to ask what even goes on in mediation? Like what is,
Yes.
you can't prevent, no matter what in mediation, from an OML, from him filing another one. So I don't even understand how we can even get to an end in mediation. It's gonna be like, we all screwed up, we're gonna issue a public statement but then carry on, what is your experience with the way that this works?
Yeah, so I've never done one in regards to open meeting law. These are all new. The regulations were just recently changed to allow this process. So even the Attorney General's office has only gone through this a handful of times. So I think the goal here is that we would understand what his concerns are with the select board's overall policies and then try to explain our position as to why we think our policies are sound. And to the extent that we do see room for improvement, we can work to change things. It's more of a dialogue to give both the board and Mr. Tubble an opportunity to express their position and for Mr. Tubble to express his frustration about certain aspects of how the board is operating. You know, I think if I'm speaking frankly, this is likely just going to be one session of mediation because I'm not too hopeful we're going to reach a resolution. So in terms of timing, I think if we set aside one day, that's probably all that's needed. But you know, I can't say definitively that it will just take one day. And to some extent, we don't know what Mr. Tubble is going to say, so it's hard to predict exactly how it's going to go. But I do think that if the board wants to at least respond to Mr. Tubble, they can say that they're not willing, the board is not willing to record. We don't record our executive sessions. That's our standard practice. That we are looking for a hybrid meeting. That's also our standard practice, plus the fact that this is a 5-hour meeting with select board members that work full-time jobs. That flexibility is needed. And then the timing aspect is appropriate. We can respond to him on that and see if he accepts it. I mean, he could decline, and in which case the board would then respond to the open meeting law complaints.
I mean, hearing that explanation with the 5 hours and all that, I'm not rationalizing it in my head how long that's actually going to be. So I could understand us wanting to do remote or something for that. Especially if it's during the week. The weekend, if this wasn't Thanksgiving and Christmas and everything coming up, if this was, I don't know, May as an example, I could understand weekend days possibly, whatever. But for me, I'm okay with just carrying on executive session rules, however we've done it. And then I guess the only other thing we have to take into account is that the final complaint, the latest complaint about
Number 9.
Yes, number 9. What we have to do with that. So,
Mark.
So to the extent that you do want to continue on with mediation, give it one more try to just say these are our terms, take it or leave it. You could also request mediation in regards to number 9, folding number 9 into the existing mediation. So that would just be a simple vote to seek mediation in regards to complaint 9 and to request that the mediation's terms be no recording, hybrid, and authorize town council to share that information.
Mark.
So moved.
On the reality of timing, to have a period of time like that, I with Carlo, I don't see that, maybe in late December, but more likely in January. It's not going to be in November. I don't have the time to do it.
And I think that's okay. I think we can, you're a volunteer board. There are a lot of commitments coming up. You just finished a town meeting. You have another town meeting. If Mr. Tubble is not amenable to that time period, then he can decline to engage in mediation and we can respond to the complaints and he can take it from there.
Chris.
thanks, Ann. So what is, I don't even know if there's typical, should we be wrapping up 9 into this mediation every year? Should we keep it separate? What is your recommendation for this? To me, I would think it would be separate because we already voted originally, but I mean, what is your?
I mean, from a legal standpoint, there really is no difference. If you're already mediating, what's the harm of adding number 9 to that? I think it's just easier and cleaner. You can also respond in, his complaint around number 9 is that you use documents at a meeting that were not incorporated into the board packet. That's not a violation of the open meeting law. So it's a simple response for me to provide to him. But if you're already going to mediate, I don't see any harm in including number 9 in that set for mediation. It's really a policy decision, not a legal decision.
I wonder, should we even be discussing 9? Was that on the agenda, or how does this work?
It is on the agenda.
The newest?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean,
So
I think
I think it sounds like the will of the board has been made known, although it's contrary to Mark's stated preference. But let's see.
An offer with conditions, not conditions,
Yeah.
a reply
Yeah, Karen.
with what we're willing to do.
Yep.
And in early 2022.
Yep.
And the ball's in his court.
Yep.
I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with that.
same.
Ivrea, does it make sense to include in a motion like, or to talk today about like if all declines, then how we would want to respond, or we can just could we take that up on November 9th?
You can take that up on November 9th.
Okay.
There'll be sufficient time,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, great.
I think that would be preferable because why go through all of the complaints?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I agree. I wasn't sure about timing, if we would need another meeting or something like that, but if we don't,
Yeah.
great.
So you have, if he declines, you have 10 business days from the date he declines, and I can respond to him tomorrow. If he declines tomorrow, you have until November 10th to respond. So we should be able to have it all set and finish it on your November 9th meeting, and I can have the letters ready to go to send on the 10th.
Thank you, Ivrea. All right, do I hear a motion? I will move, right, I move to request that complaint number 9, filed by Walt Tubble be included in, the open mediation, process with respect to complaints 5 through 8. And that, Town Council Ivrea Freed convey on behalf of the board that the board is willing to engage in mediation in a hybrid format consistent with the board's current meetings, that the board will not record its mediation sessions consistent with its usual practice under executive session, and that the board is willing to meet, to engage in mediation in early 2022.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Carlo?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
And yes. All right, very good. Thank you, Ivrea. Appreciate all the time and advice that you have provided to us.
No worries. Thanks, guys. Have a nice night.
You as well.
Good night.
Thanks, Ivrea. Folks, I'm gonna need to drop off too. Thank you very much.
Take
Dan,
care,
for doing-
Karen.
taking over. Have a good night.
Mark?
Can I harken back just for a second
Yes.
on the, when we did the motion on the recalc,
Yes.
The only thing, in order to get it posted, do we have to do anything, or were our actions enough to start posting the openings?
Why don't we confirm with Caitlin and Bob? Caitlin and Bob, what do you need from us in order to post the it's 4, correct?
4, correct.
4 at-large resident positions for the recalc ad hoc committee.
I think what you've done tonight is satisfactory, that the document as you approved it would be posted, and we'd advertise it as, volunteers needed for 4 resident slots or whatever the wording in your document is.
Great. And then, Mark, did you want to reach out to the other boards to let them know that, we'd be asking them to make these appointments, and to the chair of rec, to let them know that either that they're welcome to appoint a designee for our confirmation?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. I think we can wrap up shortly, but does anyone, I realize I haven't offered anyone a break. Does anyone need a break before we go through a couple final agenda items? Okay. Were there any additional liaison reports that folks wanted to share? Okay. I'd like to share that I did reach out to Bernie from Community Paradigm Associates yesterday to touch base about the screening committee. He's going to reach out to the screening committee members in the next couple of days to set up our first meeting. It may be that the first meeting will be an introductory and organizational meeting, or Bernie may end up recommending that we combine that organizational meeting with the first meeting to review resumes. So that, and I understand that Laura Gem is going to reach out to our 2 at-large community members to have them sworn in. Everybody else, because they're serving ex officio, does not need to be sworn in addition. So that's my other liaison report. Bob, do you have a town manager report this evening?
Thanks, Ann. Just one brief thing, really. On Sunday night, the House Minority Leader reached out to me. You've seen since yesterday, the House has quickly passed and begun to form how they're going to spend surplus funds as well as ARPA funds. So again, he reached out to me Sunday night, and just so the board knows, I gave him 3 priorities for Reading. Funding for the water tank. I asked him for $2.5 million, and he couldn't stop laughing. He said maybe 50 to 200,000 is what you should ask for. A deposit into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and funds, as mentioned at the Finance Committee meeting, funds for the employees who were frontline during the pandemic. So I just wanted to make sure you knew that. Again, his office contacted me today. I would say the water tank has the highest probability of being included, but I'll certainly keep you in the loop.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. Carlo.
If you don't mind, and thanks, I have a question. Do you know how many applications have been submitted for the?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
I haven't. I actually do want to follow up and ask Bernie that, but I don't know. I haven't asked him. It's kind of my next question for him, but I can confirm at our future meeting. All right, do we have, I know we previously mentioned a future agenda item as, talking about Zani and the Zani property and other properties. Are there other future agenda items we want to make sure we're thinking about? Chris.
Thanks, Ann. It would be, I know at a prior meeting a couple months back about us going over the select board policies and all that with the emails and the packet and whatnot.
Yep.
I think it's, like I mentioned, I think a meeting or 2 ago, that I never thought that anything pertaining to the agenda would actually make it into the packet. And it seems as if a large portion of emails actually would have fit into that criteria. So I would just like us to review it. I know that you had mentioned it for us to review it a month or 2 after.
Yep.
And I think it's around that time, so I'd just like to see that.
Sounds
If
good.
we could review it.
that was actually the other, I had that in mind as well. Carlo?
Thank you. Mark mentioned, I'm gonna say a few months ago or less, or the financial forum, I don't forget, not the recent one, the one prior to that, about our open space and our land that we have in town and an accurate inventory and possibly delegating, I mean, that isn't the right word, assigning, delegating, whatever you want to use, the two of us on this board to start going down that road, because people, former board members went down that road years ago, it sounds like, and it hasn't been revisited because we do have a lot of land that is not utilized or hasn't been discussed yet, so I don't know how we would word that as an agenda item, or, I know Mark mentioned, and maybe I didn't officially volunteer, but I expressed interest in working with anyone on that initiative to really start the process, and Zani is part of that, but obviously a lot of other land and space needs, and I think the conversation was more around space needs, and I mean, a resident shared something with me that I'm not gonna share right now because I wanna let them do it, that was a really good idea for something we've been talking about in town in regarding the senior center. So I think that'll be coming maybe at November town meeting, just the idea, proposal, which was pretty, I liked it. So stuff like that, I think we need to do a better job of. Not that we haven't, we just have really, COVID and everything else, but we really need to take stock in what can we do with this and what can't we do with it, I guess is, Mark worded it much better than I'm doing right now, but I think that needs to be handled. I know it's the end of this calendar year, but we really need to maybe start off 2022 on that path. Whether it's two of us, all five of us, whatever the case is, but, so.
Okay, so would this, would you view this as two separate agenda items? One to talk about use of the Zani property, and then another for two board members, or to set up like a subcommittee to discuss?
I think so. That's kind of, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Mark, but that's kind of what I took away from that when you brought it up.
I think I don't know if it's two separate things or if it's one thing.
Right, no, right.
To figure out all the.
One agenda item, and then there can maybe be two separate
To
paths.
include that, and a discussion of how the board is gonna proceed with it. And to get, I know that the town has already provided a bunch of input, but probably we need to bring that back, and then form a plan.
And Bob, do we have final delineation and buildable acres there yet?
Bob?
I almost said thank you, Mr. Moderator, sorry. In your current future agenda list is something that was worded, discuss recent land purchases and any other town-owned land.
That's it.
So it captures everything you're talking about. The question is whether you want to divide that into two thoughts. And obviously you're buying some more land tonight or tomorrow. That's another possible agenda item.
Okay.
Sometime in the summer, I asked the board, once you're ready to discuss the Zani land, that if you want to instruct me to ask town council to go register the two parcels, to be real simple and to be a layman, down in the Zani land, there's a dry buildable parcel and there's a wet parcel. We've done enough work that town council could go to the registry of deeds and register the land in that fashion. I'm not going to ask you to vote tonight because it's not on the agenda, but if that's an instruction you want to give me, I'll work with Ivrea, and then you'll be that much further along to having useful land. And the prior discussion, it doesn't mean the board has to do this, was that the board would consider the so-called wetland and donate to conservation, and then the dry land, who knows? So if that's, that would push that parcel as far as we can without a decision being made on what to do with those parcels. But it would be a helpful step.
Mark?
It sounds reasonable. I think I'd like to see kind of what we've learned before making that decision. I know that by seeing it isn't gonna change it necessarily, but I think I'd still like to see it.
Sure.
Seeing the parcel?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay,
And what the decisions were and how it was delineated and things like that.
Yeah, can I ask a question of
Yeah.
Bob?
Yes.
Bob, when I know of that property, dry, let's call it, versus wet, buildable versus non-buildable. When I think of non-buildable, I think of structures. Can non-buildable be recreation space, parking, and no structures, or depends?
I wanna make sure that we're
Oh,
not discussing our future
Okay,
agenda
okay, yeah,
items.
yeah, okay,
We're
all right.
discussing what our future agendas will
all right,
be,
I can hold off on
Yeah.
that, okay.
Maybe that could be part of the discussion.
Yeah, that could be part of the discussion.
Yeah, okay, that's a thought I've had, so, okay.
Bob?
Yeah, if I might, I believe it was Select Board members Halsey and Alvarado that met as a subcommittee, some time ago. And there were several meetings, I'm sure there's minutes, to discuss town-owned land. And it's a difficult information to give to you electronically because it's such large documents. But I'm sure there's a way we can, share it so that there's no need to start from scratch again if you want to look at town-owned land. But I will say the challenge was the town owns a lot of land. And the real question you want is give me something meaningful in size, and that's not easy to do. So, again, with a little bit of definition and a little bit of help, I think we can get you off to a good start to have a practical discussion about town-owned land. John and Vanessa just kind of stopped at one point after discussing a lot of ideas of what to do with land and having an inventory of the land. So, we can certainly catch up one or two board members, however you want to do it.
Thanks, Bob. Anyone else for future agenda? Yes.
So we've had the dementia-friendly training
Yes.
on the agenda, and I've mentioned it only as part of my liaison report at our last marathon meeting. We can get a training. Would it be okay if I send a request to board members with a few potential dates, including perhaps the earlier than the start of our regular meeting? It's a 1 hour training is what it would be.
Oh, so I'd like to start at
Megan's willing to
6,
do it.
you mean?
Yeah, just as a series of options, maybe just put it out there as some options that work for Megan and see if board members find a time that can work.
I'm okay with that, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks. And then one other thing that's on here also, it's down here. It relates to a joint meeting with RMLD, and I know I just saw it, so where is it? No, that's where I saw, sustainability, electrification, and vending opportunities. Whew, I knew it was there. I think that's one that we need to do a lot of planning for, and maybe we can have a quick discussion as an agenda item, and then reach out to RMLD, to the commissioners, and see if there's a time in the future that could work for them. I just think it may take some time to get that set up.
What meeting is that, Mark? Sorry.
This is where we and the commissioners.
No, with a date, what month?
So it's hiding, it's the 1, 2, 3, it's the fourth from the bottom on their future agendas right now.
Okay, gotcha.
It's kind of been sitting there for, I think I put it on when I was chair, so that's how long it's been there.
Okay.
I just think, given all the discussions, it would be a good thing to do. So maybe we can have an agenda item to plan it, and then offer some times for the future. And then I see Bob has his hand up.
Bob.
Thank you, Ann. I've asked the RMLG general manager, per Karen's instruction a week or two ago, to on November 9th have the RMLD commissioners and the general manager come in for what's listed as discussion/presentation, RMLD rates, climate law planning, and space use collaboration. Now, I'm not entirely sure what Karen has in mind, but it's possible you could add a tiny bit to that and ask them to propose some sort of a framework to have that other discussion in the future, since they'll be here.
Cool. Thank you.
Any other board members? Chris?
I guess I want to thank you for the speedy meeting before 10 o'clock, I can't tell you because we're going to adjourn, et cetera, but thank you, Ann.
Oh, my pleasure. I think it was not that anything is easy, but a relatively easy agenda to move through, fortunately, and appreciate everyone's bearing with me in my first chairing of a board in this year. So thanks very much. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
You do, motion to adjourn.
For a second.
Second.
All right, I think as Karen's not here, can I see a show of hands? All right, very good. We are adjourned.
Amazing.